Pat Chow-Fraser. I'm a professor at McMaster University. I've been conducting research in the wetlands of Georgian Bay since 2003. And we've done a lot of work on looking at the impacts of water levels, in particular the lower water levels in the bay, which have been sustained low since about 1999 when it fell. And so over these 7 or 8 years of low water levels, we've been looking at how wetlands have changed in terms of its aquatic plant community. A wetland has a large number of plants normally, and because Great Lakes tend to have fluctuating water levels, when something dominates in high water levels, when water levels go down, others will start to dominate. But because we've had this sustained period of low water levels, predominantly is the wet meadow and the emergent plants that have dominated. And these are not good fish habitat. But in addition to the fish that use it, turtles use it, birds use it, and amphibians use it. And so when there aren't those aquatic habitats, then it becomes a problem for the biodiversity. And so my research has shown that with the sustained low water levels that we've been experiencing, the plant communities have become a lot more similar and less complex as habitat for fish. And in particular, I'm talking about sport fish like the pike or muskie, yellow perch, those type of fish. And they've disappeared in some cases and have really declined in others. And so what we're trying to do now is figure out, as these wetlands are disappearing and getting smaller and less appropriate as habitat for fish, where are the fish going? So, and we're also trying to find out where the turtles are going. So this summer we are putting on little tags that can record the location of these turtles and the fish, and then find out where they like to fool around and where they like to live, so that we can actually have a better understanding of how to protect that very, very critical habitat. So why is the water level so low in Georgian Bay? There are natural cycles of lows and highs in the Great Lakes, and they follow cycles of 7, 10, 30-year periods. What's happened in the last little while is unusual, and a lot of people think that it has a lot to do with climate change, and I'm not denying that, but there could also be modifications that have happened in the St. Clair River. There could be dredging, and there could have been erosion that was unintended that has allowed more of the outflow. But I am not an expert on the hydrology, but I just know that this is an unusual thing, and it has never happened in the record that we have in terms of the water levels. In terms of whether or not we have been able to determine the impacts of climate change on the wetlands, this is an area that is very, very new. The research I think that we are doing now will build the foundation for that. But I think that a lot of what we're going to do is look at archived photos and hindcast what has occurred based on our knowledge now, and then forecast what will happen. So there'll be a lot of iteration back and forth, but I believe that the work that we're doing now is probably the only work that has been done to this extent on a geographic basis for eastern and northern Georgian Bay. We're lucky that currently in Georgian Bay, there are very few impacts based on development. But that is not to say that it can't get worse, and it will get worse as we get more people moving into the bay and wanting to develop. So one of the things that I always say to watch out for is that as these wetlands are moving out from the shoreline, our historic shoreline, there's a tendency for people to try to rip out the vegetation and move down basically towards their water. And we caution that, first of all, it's illegal to do that because you're not supposed to do anything below the high water mark. But in addition to that, it's very detrimental because when the water levels return, that habitat needs to be there so that it will regenerate. So people should definitely not try to go below and rip out plants or try to modify that. Or I've seen in some cases people truck up sand to make a beach out of it, and that's a terrible thing to do. So these are the kinds of impacts that I think are of a human disturbance that we should be looking out for. One of the key questions that I actually do have is, where are the fish, the muskies? The muskies that had been around for a long, long time that we saw back in the 1980s, the young fish, where are they? We don't find them anymore. And that's a big concern for me, because the muskie is kind of an umbrella species that when they start to disappear because they're young, when they're not recruiting into the population, then that's something that we should be concerned about, because that could mean other fish are also affected. Other fish that are not as glamorous as the muskie.